Later, I found out that you really only need to write for who you are and what your background is. Your story being unique makes it authentic. So if someone's going to call you out because that's not the way they grew up, well, that's right. That's the way you grew up. This is how I grew up.
Welcome to the Write It Scared podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Fraser, a formerly repressed creative soul turned fiction writer, story editor, and author accelerator certified fiction book coach. At Write It Scared, we tell the truth about why writing a novel is so hard by acknowledging that most writers grapple with two stories: the one they want to put on the page to the best of their ability, and the often subconscious internal story that prevents them from doing it. This show is designed to help you identify and rewrite the internal narrative holding you back while you discover and write the story you want to tell and learn all the tools to help you do that successfully. Join me each week for a new episode where we'll talk about writing to deepen our understanding of the craft and of ourselves as writers. Writing a novel is an inside job that we do not do alone. Welcome to Write It Scared. I'm glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hi, writer. Welcome back to the Write It Scared podcast, where we talk about the brave and messy act of writing our novels so that we can do it with more clarity, more confidence, and a little less self-doubt and not feel so damn alone. I'm your host, Stacey Fraser, and I have an amazing guest interview to kick off season 3 for us. Today, I'm in conversation with Stan Yan, who is a graphic novelist, and his debut upper middle grade graphic novel, The Many Misfortunes of Eugenia Wang, is coming out on September 30th, 2025. And if you are a parent, a librarian, or you work in the school system, you are definitely going to want to hang out until the end of this podcast because Stan has an amazing giveaway that is happening for his street team, those who help him promote the book. And that amazing giveaway gift is a school visit from him, which is so cool. So you can hear all the details of how to become a part of Stan's street team at the end of the episode. So without further ado, let me give you Stan's bio, and then we will jump into his interview. Stan Yan is an award-winning, first-generation, American-born Chinese, Denver-based writer, illustrator, graphic artist, and instructor. He is currently the co-regional advisor for the Rocky Mountain chapter of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. He's a professor at the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design and co-founding professor of the Cuttlefish Arts Academy Kidlit Art School. His late middle grade graphic novel debut, The Many Misfortunes of Eugenia Wang, is the 2025 Junior Library Guild selection. Hi, Stan. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm so happy to have you. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Thanks for having me, Stacey.
Yeah, so we get to pretend that we haven't just talked for like the last 10 minutes and just roll right into this podcast. This is the part where we pretend, and now we go into the questions.
Okay.
So I already gave you a bit of a bio, but could you please share a bit more about your journey to becoming a graphic novelist? And then we will get into talking about your debut graphic novel.
It's been a long, long journey. In fact, like my earliest memories of holding a pencil were of drawing the same stick figure over and over again in these boxes that I later found out were called comic panels. So I was doing comics before I realized that was what I was doing. But for me, I think comics has always just been kind of the medium for me to be a storyteller. Because I can remember like drawing these things before dinner so that I could show them to my mom and dad before we had to eat. So I had to draw fast. And so at that point, I didn't really have a ton of pride in my artwork. You know, I drew all my characters as stick figures so that I could get them done quickly. But that's what I've always been, you know. So when the first self-published comic that I made was actually an elective for my elective illustration course at the University of Colorado when I was studying, of all things, accounting. So I didn't even study art or writing or anything like that. And really, I made this comic mainly to entertain my friends. But then I ended up taking this comic to these local comic swap meets. And so strangers were buying this photocopied, saddle-stitched book from me. And then they'd come back and tell me how much they liked it. And to me, that was the juice, man. That was the thing that addicted me to being a storyteller, to have strangers come back and tell me how much my comic affected them in some way, shape, or form, or made them laugh, or whatever. So my whole journey to where I am right now has really been kind of trying to widen my reader base so that I can have more strangers tell me how much, my book ruined their lives or whatever. 'Cause that's cool too. I'm okay with that. As long as there's like a real visceral reaction by them to what I'm trying to do. And so yeah, I did the comic convention circuit for about 20 years, towards the end of which I decided that, I felt like I was just spinning my wheels. I was limiting my reader base and I needed to widen it even further. So I started pursuing traditional publishing after I found out about it by writing my first children's book, after which I joined the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators to find out, how I could get it published or if I should self-publish it or whatever, and found out, hey, there is actually a roadmap into traditional publishing, and I'm going to do it. I mean, it was something that was elusive for me in, regular comic books because it seemed like everyone that you heard of that got into, drawing for Marvel or DC or whatever, got into it in a different way. And it was a way that they weren't telling anyone because, the thing that they're telling anyone is you got to come to Comic-Con, you got to get in this big long line, and you've got to get into this lottery system for a chance to get your portfolio looked at. And then we're going to just throw your name out because we've seen 1,000 different portfolios and we're just thinking about where we're going to get a drink afterwards.
So joining SCBWI, I always mess that up.
Yeah.
Sounds like it was kind of the step that
It was
launched you in a
life-changing, yeah.
new direction with life
So yeah, having a 3-year-old son that suddenly became afraid of coming down to my basement studio because of all the zombie characters hanging around changed my whole life. So he changed the trajectory of my life by getting me to think about doing children's books. Because my whole life, my relatives have said, "Oh, you should do children's books. You should do children's books." And I'm like, yeah, I'm not really, motivated to do that. But then you have a kid and that changes all of your inspirations. And now that's all I want to do. I mean, he's 15 now, but I still wouldn't want to do anything else.
Oh, you're so speaking to the choir. I totally get it. I totally get it because my daughter's 9. It's so funny. I also pursued a very analytical background. In college, I have a degree in economics and in medicine, and I don't do any of that anymore.
Well, I never did accounting. I mean, I was a stockbroker for 13 years,
and
that helped me immensely. But I do think having an analytical background does help you in this industry because you have to be an entrepreneur in so many different ways. And so, like, the accounting thing, well, if I don't have to hire someone to do my taxes, well, that's a plus because, you don't go into this hitting the ground running and making a ton of money. In fact, it's just the opposite. Like it's a pay to play kind of thing, like doing the comic book convention circuit. Yeah, you have to front all the money to produce your product to take it out there and hopefully make some of your money back.
Yeah, and now it sounds like you're in a position to where you get to do what you enjoy, but you also are in positions to give back. I mean, I know that you're part of the board for the SCBWI.
Well, I'm a part of the Rocky Mountain chapter's regional team. So yeah, not the board of the CBWI.
It counts.
But it does count. And I do feel a lot better placed being a part of the regional team as opposed to the national.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for sharing more about your background and how you got into it. It sounds like it was always a part of you, something that you love to do, and it's gradually morphed into the genre specificity that you produce now. So why don't we roll into talking about this book, The Many Misfortunes of Eugenia Wang. Listeners can't see it, but I have this amazing picture in front of me of the cover. And I am spoiled. I got to see a sneak peek of the whole thing. So tell us what the book's about and what do you want? What do you want listeners to know about it?
Okay. Well, I think like the best way to introduce people to it is something that my marketing team came up with at Simon and Schuster because they came up with this great bookmark for ALA to give away to people at for those that don't know, it's the American Library Association conference and it happens every summer, but in a different city. And they sent me out to promote my book, and so they made all the stuff, and they came up with this great tagline for the front of the bookmark that I wish they had come up with before they printed all the books, because I wish this was on the books as well. It says, "Most birthdays bring cake. Eugenia Wang's brings disasters." And then on the flip side, it goes on to say, in this heartfelt graphic novel, a girl born on a day considered unlucky starts to wonder if she is really cursed when she's troubled by visions of doom. But if you want a little bit more concise explanation about what this book is about, the back of the trade paperback probably does a better job of that. So it says, Eugenia Wang never gets to do anything fun. She's never celebrated her birthday on her actual birthday, April 4th, because of her mom's belief in the Chinese superstition that 4 is an unlucky number. Her mom won't even let her go to a comic art summer camp because she thinks art is a waste of time. This year, though, Eugenia is determined to defy her mom, and that means applying for camp, partying on her actual birthday, and maybe inviting her super cute crush Enrique to the party too. But then Eugenia gets hit in the head with a sneaker during PE and starts getting weird, unnerving visions of impending doom about her upcoming birthday. It might be the after effect of her head injury, or maybe she's just anxious about turning 13. As the visions get worse, Eugenia suspects an unseen force may be sending her messages through her artwork. And if she's haunted after all, Eugenia will have to figure out why before it's too late. Even more horrifying, she might have to do the unthinkable. Admit mom was right.
Ah, what that back cover blurb is so good. I mean, it just takes you through this character's status quo right up to that inciting incident, right up to the point where we jump into the second act of the book and then leaves you like, oh, what's going to happen? That was really well done. Bravo. Publishing team.
Well, it was a team effort. It was a team effort, yes.
Yeah. So this is a story about a little girl who is, facing this big number, 13 years old.
Right.
Parental pressure, right, to perform, societal pressure, peer pressure to relax, maybe take it easy a little bit, have a little bit more fun, but also to conform. And so it seems like you're delivering some big questions and problems in this meeting.
And I wonder if that's why 13 is considered an unlucky number in Western culture, because it seems to be like when we reflect upon our childhoods, when there's like the most grief and angst.
But I never thought about that.
It's kind
before,
of good
but...
because, it's a balancing because based on the back cover blurb, it's about the number 4, but it's also about the number 13. It's about Eastern superstitions versus Western superstitions, and it's all coming to a head in my story because mom is the one that believes in the Eastern superstitions, and she's kind of discounted it because she's grown up in a Western culture,
Mm-hmm. Right. And doesn't understand, like, why can't we just let this go?
Right.
Right.
And even like the way I color the book, it may not be obvious, but there's the Eastern versus Western superstition in that too. Like I don't even say anything about it really until the last page of the book.
Oh, okay. Well, we can't give it away.
No.
We can't give that away. Okay.
But that's just a little teaser
there you go.
for everyone. But when you do read the book, don't just flip to the back cover or the back page. That is just so not my style.
Okay.
And if my friend Amy is listening to this podcast, I'm talking about you, Amy.
All right.
Because she does that.
What I want to know is you seem to incorporate a lot of horror elements into your stories. and use them. So, for example, in this, I mean, just looking at the cover, which is not a giveaway, right? We've got flames. There's a feel of a vibe of fire and a little girl hanging from a rope, like she's going
Yes.
to drop to her doom.
And just, to make it clear, it's not a noose, it's a PE rope.
Yeah, excellent. One of those climbing ropes, which are horrifying by
Yes.
themselves. Anyway, okay, so tell me what your thoughts are on writing horror with humor for young readers and why you like that. Why
Yeah.
it works for the stories that you want to tell.
I mean, I think it works on a lot of different levels because for me, like my roots as a writer is all about the jokes. The things that I wanted to do growing up was it was inspired by newspaper comics. So you have a joke every 3 or 4 panels. And but I think for the horror genre, I think it's useful to have a little bit of a rhythm. And you don't have that rhythm if it's just heavy, heavy, heavy the whole time.
Oh,
And so, and I feel like the stories and the movies and everything that are the most memorable to me are the ones that have kind of a back and forth rhythm, you
yeah,
know.
think Goosebumps.
When I was making this book, it was the seed, the root of it was that I wanted to write an illustrated comic that actually scared me because in spite of like the storied history of horror and comics, it never really did it for me the same way as scary movies and spooky novels did. And so this was a challenge to myself. But as I kind of reflected on what, pop culture, spooky pop culture really stayed with me. There was always like a child involved. And so I'm like, okay, I need to make my protagonist a child. And in that way, this book accidentally became a children's book. I didn't go into it with the goal of making a spooky children's book at all.
Well, sometimes books, they become what they're supposed to be if we stick with them long enough to let them,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. And this book has gone through all sorts of changes, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more as we go into, what kind of scared me about writing that led me to making this book.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Because I know that this is what this podcast is really about.
Yeah, it takes me a while to get there, but you are right. That is what this podcast is about. Well, tell us a little bit about your writing and illustrating process. Walk us through what it's like for you to go from an idea to a polished novel that's ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's evolving as we speak, and it's continually evolved. So what it used to be when I was back in college was me just thinking of a funny idea and then writing it down. And then later on, I'd take all these funny ideas and try to shoehorn them into a particular main character story in a particular chronology. And so I think that's as close to a pantser as I've ever been. But my current process actually goes with me kind of brainstorming a list of unlikely main or characters, not necessarily main characters, because a lot of these characters may end up in the same story, which is happening in the current story that I'm writing, which I don't know if I can talk about because it hasn't been announced. But then what I'll do is I'll like take one of the characters and come up with a backstory behind that character or all these characters that I feel like should be the main characters in a story. And then I'll write what's called a log line. So it's like an elevator pitch, 1 to 2 sentence elevator pitch that basically tells you very briefly what you need to know about the character, the conflict, and the stakes in a story. And that's the foundation on which I want to build a plot. Then I'll go ahead and outline a plot. And now, granted, as my caveat, up until now, I haven't used this particular process for any of the stories that I've written. Like I said, it's an evolution in process. But I do find that as I'm coming up with new ideas, this is how I'm going about it because, everything I'm doing is really time consuming. And so anywhere I can be efficient is great. This story, the Many Misfortunes of Eugenia Wang, was a 264-page full color graphic novel. I did everything in it. The lettering, the
Wow.
coloring, the penciling, the inking, the covers. And after I took out like all the time that I was waiting for editorial notes back, I figured out I actually drew the whole thing. All the artistic process of this book happened in one calendar year as I've ever drawn. And so, and every step of the process is like that. So I'll get to plotting it, then I'll script out the first 20 to 30 pages. I'll draw those. I'll do the character designs and maybe some environmental sketches. And all of this not necessarily in that particular order, mind you, because sometime along the way I'll like say, oh, it would be a great way of drawing the evil twins. I should draw them like this. And then so I'll have to do the character designs or some sketches or things like that. And then once I've done that, and of course wait for editorial to come back, then I can do the whole script. And then once I've done the whole script, then I'll do page panel layouts, which is something that I kind of learned from someone that I used to teach with at the art school at the Community College of Aurora that went to Svan Art College of Art and Design. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. So that you can kind of even tell based on these little thumbnail page panel layouts where like your climax is in the story, where, important moments are based on like where your double page spreads, full bleed spreads are, or where a
Oh,
large
okay.
panel is going to be. And then once I've done that, then I'll actually draw, the first 20 or 30 pages, make sure I'm on the right track and figure things out. And a lot of this is, and once I'm okay to go through and, dummy out the full story, then I actually do full page loose pencil layouts with all of the lettering in it to make sure that I was honest about with myself about how much space I needed to leave for the lettering. And then I figured out, since I'm working almost all digitally, I go in and go straight to inks from there because I find that penciling it is a little redundant and you can easily change things because you're working on different layers. So I'll go straight to inks and then go to colors from there. And then what I'll do is once I've got the final artwork, I actually turn off the lettering and then export it to InDesign and re-letter it all over again.
Wow.
Which makes it a little bit easier because if editorial decides, we need to change this character's name wherever it appears all the way through the story, they can do so very thoroughly, completely, and quickly. 5 minutes. It might take them 5 minutes to do it. If I actually had to do it in Procreate where I draw, I might miss a few instances of it,
Mhm.
and it might take me literally a week to do the same thing that would take 5 minutes. So that's why it sounds like it takes a lot of time to re-letter it all over again, but really we're
This sounds like
saving
a
a whole
revision
lot of
tip.
time. Yes, yes, absolutely. And I don't
Yeah.
know how many of your listeners are also illustrators. So this may mean nothing to people
Well,
that are only writers.
I do have a lot of listeners, and I know a lot of writers who are debating about whether their idea would work better as narrative fiction or whether they want to, attempt a graphic novel. So
Yeah,
that's part of the reason I was so interested in having you on. So just to put all of what you shared kind of in a box. I mean, the process is very similar. It's like you come up with an idea and then you got to test the legs. Will it go
yeah,
anywhere, right? Of all of these ideas, which is where
right,
the log line or the premise statement or the ability to convey
right.
the desire and the conflict and the stakes, right?
Hmm.
Is what you come up with. Then, it sounds like I feel like I'm getting the vibe of
Yeah, you don't
a
want to draw like
screenwriter.
full color 100 pages before you realize it doesn't work
It
and the
doesn't
foundation
work.
is bad.
Right.
And I
So,
see that so much as a comics instructor, sequential art instructor,
yeah.
where students will come in and I'm like, I've been working on this book and I want to like work on the next chapter in your class as my project. I'm like, nope, we're not doing that. We're
Yeah.
starting from scratch because inevitably they'll skip some of the learning objectives because they've been doing it this way for so long.
Sure. And you got to make
And
sure it's a
I'm
story
there to teach
first.
them, you know? Yeah, yeah.
The story has to come first. I mean, it
Yeah,
is,
you don't
you
want to
know.
devote yourself a year of your life to something that has no hope of selling to
So,
anyone.
so like we were saying, you have an idea, you kind of pressure test the idea with that log line, and then your process now is that you're starting to outline it. Kind
Yeah.
of sounds like in a screenwriting format, where it's really kind of abbreviated.
Yeah. I mean, and for a lot of people that aren't familiar with that or aren't used to it, I've seen people do it other ways too, where you write it as prose and
Mhm.
then you let whoever you're maybe collaborating with on this pitch or this query that you've hired on. I should say that you're not collaborating. You've hired them for their time to create these character designs, create this world building and rough out the first 20 or 30 pages for your pitch packet
Yeah. I think
with the
that's
understanding that if this gets sold, that they'll be the artist that's going to get brought on.
got it. So just in that vein is like, how do you know if an idea that you have might work well as a graphic novel? Because it's got to be something you can convey the
Right,
story both visually and with dialogue and narration.
right.
How
I
do you
mean, I
know?
think it's probably a little bit easier if you're already a published author, because that can be a discussion that you're having with your agent or your editor or whatever,
All right, well, we
where
don't do easy, so let's talk about it for everybody else.
but otherwise, what I would recommend is to have like a critique group, put together a critique group. And it doesn't even have to be a critique group of people looking to do graphic novels necessarily. But when you're brainstorming the foundation, so the log line, they're the ones that are going to tell you that, oh yeah, that one is the one that you want to run with. And it may, and that at that point, you don't know whether it's just going to be a novel or if it's going to be a graphic novel or what it's going to be. But if you've got something that can be compellingly visual and is something that an illustrator can add something to, because what an illustrator is going to bring to your project is not linear. I think a lot of times when collaborations happen and the writers have an idea of what needs to be drawn and they give art notes, the problem almost always inevitably is that whatever they're saying in the art notes is too on the nose. It's redundant. And a lot of times what you want an artist to do is to illustrate something that is maybe a another storyline that is running underneath.
Like
So
subtext.
yeah, the subtext exactly.
Mm.
Or to actually circumvent the text, you know, in fun
Like smoke and
ways.
mirrors.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you say one thing, but the character really feels something, but don't describe it that way.
Yeah.
So like the character says "yay," but they're saying it with a sad face.
Right.
So you know that they don't really feel like that. So while all their friends are gung ho, the main character is not really sure if they want to go along with this plan kind of
That's
thing, you
such an
know?
interesting way to put it. I mean, we do it in novel writing too. It's just using different pieces of the writing process to show the meaning of the moment, years of that
Yep.
moment, because there's often plenty,
So, I mean, and
many.
there's a lot of different ways that you can handle it. I mean, you can handle the interiority as a caption box, so if you're using captions to have internal dialogue for the character, you can reflect the interiority that way. And sometimes that's more effective, but sometimes it's better just to say nothing and to draw it.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like the drawing is much more than just enhancement,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yeah. And in fact, I think sometimes it can be detrimental. Like, who was it? I think Dynamite Comics, they decided that they were going to do a comic series retelling of Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was the short story or a novella that inspired Blade Runner.
Oh,
But their constraint was they weren't going to leave anything out that was written in the novella. So everything that he wrote is going to be written in the comic. And if you are familiar with the way Philip K. Dick writes, he jumps around a lot, which makes it really difficult to illustrate. And I have to admit, I had my local comic store put that series in my pull box because I'm obsessed with Blade Runner. I haven't finished reading it because it is so hard to read. And they did no favors to the novella by illustrating it. So it doesn't always work. You have to write to your medium.
makes absolute sense. Right to your medium and right to your audience. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you were to take all of what you told me and give, let's say, one or two tips to someone out there who thinks they might have an idea for a graphic novel, but has no idea where to start or where to go with it, what would you
Uh-huh.
tell them to do first?
Start small. So
Okay.
do it because you're not going to know whether or not this is something that you're passionate about until you do it. But don't start with your epic. Is going to be your 12 issue graphic novel series. Yeah, don't start with that. Start with something really small, a short story or even just a comic strip, just to see if like you can communicate what you're trying to and evoke the reactions that you're trying to in this medium.
Okay. Let's say this person does that and they
Okay?
love it and they're
Okay?
into it. Then what would they do?
Then just keep doing it. And I would say make sure that you're writing for yourself more than anything else. Because find out why you loved it. And because the only thing that's guaranteed in this really, really time-consuming process. Now, just to give you a context. So the many misfortunes of Eugenia Wang, or from the point that I started writing it, I started in 2016. And it's getting published, 9 years later?
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And so will listeners, because
Yes.
those are facts that kind of get glossed over is how long something really takes to
Yeah,
bring to fruition. And I thought I read in your acknowledgement section or somewhere in there that you had considered writing this as a novel or that you did try to write
I
this.
did. I started it as a novel and I liked it and it was coming out pretty nicely. But I
That's not
mean,
your whole heart.
my muse is comics.
Right.
That's how I envision everything. And so why try to retrofit it to something that is actually harder to sell into the market?
Okay. Well, let's transition here because, as you said earlier, a big part of this podcast is dedicated to telling the truth about why creative endeavors can be so hard, whether that's creating graphic novels or it's writing narrative fiction. And one way we do that is by exposing unhelpful internal narratives that hold us back when we try to craft our stories. So, and my philosophy is that if we talk about this stuff, if we share it, then it gets normalized and nobody thinks, oh, I'm a bad writer. I should
Right.
just give this up. I shouldn't bother because the reality is it takes from 2016 to 2025 to bring a project into the light in the way you want
Yeah.
it, the way it was meant to be, right?
Right,
So
right. Yeah, I
there's no
mean,
bad, right?
my original vision of it is very far removed from what this is, but you're correct. That description is exactly what it was and is a stronger product because of all the steps that it went through and all the hoops that I had to jump through. And if you talk to most people that know me as a creator, I'm I'm pretty positive and optimistic, and I wouldn't be someone that you would describe as having, what do you call it?
Imposter
A
syndrome?
imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I kind of did in a way without realizing it. So the original version of this story didn't include a character that was Chinese. In fact, it was a character that was named Morty Rose. So when I first started writing the story, I told you I'd written a picture book. I'd written and illustrated a picture book that I ended up self-publishing called There's a Zombie in the Basement, inspired by my son's fear of my zombie artwork. And so I even named the main character my son's name, but I drew him as a white ginger. But then I started reading a bunch of books by Chinese American authors like Andrea Wang, Grace Lin, Kelly Yang, Lisa Yi, and they were really inspiring, but it made me think, well, why didn't I draw my main character to look more like my son or more namely someone like me? Why did I draw him as a ginger instead? And so it made me do a lot of soul searching and think back to, when I was a child, what were the books that had Chinese American character, Chinese characters in them? And I could only think of one in my school library, and it was The Five Chinese Brothers, which didn't make me very proud of being Chinese.
Mhm.
And so I think I felt like I didn't really have permission to make a main character in my book Chinese until that point because of the lack of representation. Even though I was already in my 40s as an adult, it was a reflex. I never even considered making my character look Chinese. I went straight to making my character look white. And I had all these rationalizations, but when it really came down to it, it never dawned on me to do that. And I was like, well, I don't want to be a part of the problem because if a future writer or illustrator read my picture book and doesn't feel like they have the permission to make a character that looks like them, then I'm a part of the problem. I'm not a part of the solution. And that was something that I needed to come to grips with. And so at that point, I made Morty Rose, Morty Chen, and then that eventually became Eugenia Wang.
Wow. Wow.
So
I think that's just
representation matters.
Yeah. Yeah, representation matters. And also, I mean, just what you shared, thank you for sharing it because it was quite vulnerable. Sometimes it takes having things brought to our attention in different ways for us to examine our internal motivations because they've been planted from a long time ago. And they may be holding us back or keeping us from doing the best work that we can in the world.
And I think the imposter syndrome part of it just came from me going, I don't want to make my character Chinese because I don't know that I'm Chinese enough. And why should I speak for, a population of over 1 billion people out there? Why is my voice and my story right? Am I going to be called out for being inauthentic or this doesn't represent? And I mean, later I found out, and it was something that was confirmed with me when Grace Lin came to speak at an event, that you really only need to write for who you are and what your background is. Your story being unique makes it authentic. So if someone's going to call you out because that's not the way they grew up, well, that's right. That's the way you grew up. This is how I grew up.
I love that. That's your thumbnail for the podcast, or not thumbnail, but I think my head's in a graphic novel. Thinking about a thumbnail, but that's
my
your
caption box, my
caption
interiority.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that and for what it was like to struggle and how you kind of came to the realization that your story is yours and who it.
And you're never too, old. It's the whole, old dog can't learn new tricks kind of thing. That's not true. We do get stubborn as we get older. Fight the stubbornness. That's what I am telling everyone. Fight your stubbornness.
I love that. I love that. Well, what do you think gives you the most joy and satisfaction when it comes to the work that you get to do? What do you love the most about all of it?
The reader reactions. I think I told you that earlier.
You mentioned that.
But I do, one of the things I wanted to get to is that this is a long process. So because it may not sell, the process of creating it needs to give you some joy. and feed your passions. So even if no one ever reads it, I mean, I think a lot of artists have been talking about this on social media recently, where, not everything that you create needs to be put on social media or has to be publication ready. Sometimes you just need to make stuff for yourself. And I think with a project this long, you need to do it for yourself first and foremost. So don't be saying, I need to do this because I'm chasing this trend. Because by the time your graphic novel comes out, that trend is long gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I often talk to the writers that work with me about narrowing the focus because we always kind of get distracted by the great big picture of done,
yeah,
right? The end outcome, the end all, whether that's the book is done or whether that is the
right.
book is published.
Because, that's when all those people are making these exciting videos on social media, is when they're done.
That's because yeah. So like us watching that is flipping to the end of the book.
Right, Amy.
and instead, we can't control any of that. So, but we definitely can control where we put our attention and our time management into, right? So we might as well put it into something we enjoy. I don't know about you, but I'm doing this stuff because I hate it. I'm doing it because I like it and it's a challenge, right?
It's
a
because
challenge.
it's quick, easy money.
Oh yeah, baby.
It's guaranteed bucks, man.
So, is there any particular piece of creative advice that's inspired you or that you've held on to over the years?
The thing that I've learned that has been the most useful is to kill your darlings. You got to do it. You got to do it. And that's like this whole process with, my editor and my agent, who's also editorial, that has helped the most. I mean, do what needs to be done in the service of your story because, the the darlings, it doesn't mean they aren't great. In fact, I'm going to be putting all of my discarded darlings into a PDF for all of my Team Misfortune members. So on pub date, I will send you a PDF of all of the cutting room floor, all of the director's cuts and the commentary along with those. Because I still love them, but yeah, I agree. They interrupted the pacing of the story or they weren't necessary and in the service of the story, as a whole.
I can't wait. Remind me of the pub date again.
It's September 30th.
Oh
So
my
it's
gosh,
not
so
long
it's like
from now.
30 days away. Wait,
It's just around the corner. Yeah. Yep.
So, anything that you're currently working on that you'd like to share about? And if you don't have anything, you mentioned before that you might not be able
I
to
don't think I can
talk about it.
officially say anything, but it's probably more than a hint. But the universe that my current project exists in, I've been doing as a weekly webcomic called Peter Cadaver. So if you go to my website, because I don't think it's petercadaver.com. Should I say it? SalemCharterAcademy.com.
Well, that was actually kind of the next question is where can people find you? So please tell us all the...
Well, yeah, you can find me at stanyan.me. And if you specifically want to get straight to information about the many misfortunes of Eugenia Wang, I did not buy the URL, the many misfortunes of EugeniaWang.com, because that's just insane to make people type in. So I went with EugeniaWangComic.com. And I can get you there, and I can get you to really, really easy ways of joining my street team, which is the Team Misfortune that I spoke about. Because you can do like basically almost nothing and officially join it and get all the freebies I'm going to be sending you.
Do officially almost nothing.
Really, totally. There's so little that you need to do. Like there's all these people out there that qualify, that like routinely share my stuff on social media. That's all you need to do to join Team Misfortune. But you have to join it to remind me to send this to your email address. So all of you that are watching this that have routinely supported me, get on my list so I can send you my outtakes.
Okay, cool. Well, I will make sure to include a link that says, Team Misfortune Street Team. Like, go here for
Yep.
free stuff that you
And
have
and
to
you
do
can
very little
actually
for.
win like stuff like t-shirts and mugs, like because every month I'm giving out like merch, Team Misfortune merch. But my pub date giveaway is going to be the biggest one because I'm giving away a school author visit. So
Oh,
so if
oh,
you
that
if
was
you are an
easy.
educator out there, a school librarian, principal, a teacher, get on my list because you could win that.
Okay. And the place to get on your list is that the Eugenia? Okay.
EugeniaWangComic.com, and then you scroll down and click on Team Misfortune.
Perfect. Thank you
Okay,
so much for your time
excellent.
today, for coming on the podcast. You have been an absolute delight. It was so cool to learn about how graphic novels are developed and what your process has been like. And I just wish you all the best with this book.
Well, thank you so much,
Yes.
and thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Write It Scared podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please make sure to hit the follow button so you never miss an episode. And please leave a review. Reviews help other writers like you find the voices and messages they need to hear to continue to write their stories. Let's lift each other up. Remember, you can be scared and still be unstoppable. I'll see you next week.